My friends, good day. Yesterday, an American F-35 was shot down over Iran. It seems that it managed to land, although in this war for now, it helped minimize American losses. So we will have to be very careful. Potentially, it could have come back. Potentially, it crashed somewhere because there are images showing radar tracking, showing helicopters conducting searches over Saudi Arabia. So potentially it crashed. It just managed to head towards Saudi Arabia. It crashed along the way. We won't really know. There have been incidents with this kind of aircraft that were sometimes kept classified for more than 10 years. So there you go. I'm telling you what we know so far. It seems that a second plane was also detected. But again, we don't know. Are the Iranians saying this just to boast, or did they really hit it in this war? A lot of the images you see are fake. A lot of images and videos are generated by artificial intelligence. So honestly, everything we know should be taken, as they say, with a grain of salt. So the F-35 is one of the most expensive programs in human history. Never in human history have we spent so much on a weapon system. $2 billion. So here's what you need to know. Just because we've spent $2 trillion on it doesn't make it invulnerable. Because the only thing we know is that it's $2 trillion taken from taxpayers' money and given to the arms lobby. Because that's how it is in the United States. You have insulin that costs $1,500 per dose, but at the same time, you have a country that spends most of its tax revenue and even goes into debt to pursue weapon systems. When a new program is established, what we know is that yes, it's going to pay for election campaigns. Yes, it's going to create jobs in certain states. And then it allows some politicians to boast by saying, yes, thanks to this program, 4,000 jobs have been created. But you shouldn't believe that the taxpayer is getting as much value as the manufacturer's marketing brochures claim. And that's true for all products, but in the arms industry, it's even more pronounced. Now, there's something you need to know. If you look at this plane, which is supposed to be stealthy, what does stealth mean? What does stealth mean for these planes? Because we have aircraft that are supposed to have the lowest possible radar signature, thermal signature, and even visual signature. They will never be completely transparent. These aren't glass planes. There's an image from World War I that shows they tried to create a plane that was partially transparent, which was, at the time, a very naive way to try to achieve stealth. But today, what we're trying to do is, for example, you remember the F-117 that was shot down, by the way, over Yugoslavia in 1999. It was shot down by a Russian missile. 2 missiles were launched. One missed, the other hit. You see, the pilot managed to eject. He was rescued the next day. But just to tell you that we have this marketing promise that these planes are stealthy, but it's a cat and mouse game. That means those who make these planes are trying to reduce the traces they leave. At the same time, those who are there to chase them are trying to improve their detection systems to find them anyway. A very simple example. Radars that have to distinguish between the signal and the noise. Well, ideally, what we want is for a stealth aircraft to hide in the noise. That means the return is so weak that it will blend into the noise. Except that if we make better radars and have better computers, we can still manage to distinguish them. That means that today, for one generation of radars, you can have an aircraft that's stealthy. For the next generation, suddenly it's no longer stealthy because they have better antennas. They have better computers. And that's it. So it can be a battle of computing power. For example, the one that was shot down in Yugoslavia, you can see it. You can see the pieces in Belgrade at the Aviation Museum. The pieces that weren't sold to Russia and China. Because when it fell almost intact. It landed on its back. It wasn't disintegrated because the missile didn't technically hit it. It exploded next to it. And so the pilot, they completely lost control because there were still some pieces that hit the fuselage. But basically, the aircraft fell in one piece. It was cut up. Part of it is in the museum, part in Moscow and part in Beijing. And so that also led to a lot of stories, industrial espionage, and so on. But if you look at this plane, it was very angular. One of the techniques it used to be stealthy was, for example, when radar waves hit one side, they wouldn't be reflected back to the transmitter's antenna, but instead would be reflected elsewhere at an angle of about 30 degrees. The radar sends a signal but gets nothing back, so it detects no plane. But there are countermeasures for that. For example, a simple countermeasure is instead of having the receiver and the transmitter in the same place, what you can do is consider, for example, a radar called multistatic radar. So we have a radar with a transmitter here. We have receivers 10 kilometers to the left, 10 kilometers to the right, another 10 kilometers and one far in the back. And what's going to happen is that the transmitter, so all of these are networked together, they know the transmitter just sent a pulse and they're going to look for echoes. And actually, another one of the radars can pick up a return. That means the return won't necessarily come back in the direction it was sent, but it can arrive somewhere else. We can also consider VHF radars. For example, we can consider radars using VHF waves, which range from 30 to 300 MHz, corresponding to 1 to 10 meters. So these are waves that, if you look at 1 to 10 meters, are related to the size of airplanes and the structures of the airplane. So you can get interesting returns. You can have more potential for resonance than with much shorter waves. You see, there's a Russian system, for example, that has antennas. They look like television antennas. And then it actually uses this type of waves to detect airplanes. And it seems that China has sent, and we've known this for a few weeks, China has sent Iran a new radar system that's mounted on a truck, which is actually capable of detecting stealth aircraft. So indeed, what is its actual real capability? We don't know, but we're going to find out. Why? Because you have to know that this war we're seeing in Iran is also an intelligence war. Because the Chinese have their own system. They're developing a system, for example, to detect planes, stealth planes, and they're developing it specifically for the F-35. Okay, it's simple. How are they going to test it? They don't have an F-35 on hand that's going to fly back and forth over the factory so they can test and calibrate. They don't have one. But if we have a theater of operations like Iran, for example, well, what we're going to do is tell Iran, listen, we'll give you units of this radar, you install them, and then we'll collect the data. The radar is free, just let us collect the data. So the data goes directly back to Beijing. It also seems that there is a data center, a ship in the area with a lot of radars and everything to capture all the movements of the Americans and all that, to try to understand a bit how they operate in real conditions, because this is not an exercise. So in terms of espionage value, it's really extraordinary. So yes, we'll see how it develops. But basically, look, I'm sure Ateshwet will talk about it if he hasn't already. But basically, it feels like the American taxpayer keeps getting ripped off. Because it's still 2 trillion. It's not a small program. I know very well that Iranians are intelligent. I believe that 68% of women are engineers and things like that. They're still a very, very advanced people. But if you look at it in terms of budget, there's still some scamming going on. A simple thing. The Iranian military program is $10 billion a year. Just the extra funding the Pentagon is asking for this war is $200 billion. You see, that's a ratio of 1 to 20. That's on top of the trillion in the Pentagon's regular annual budget. The Pentagon, which has failed all its audits for the past 25 years, you see? So, when you see that a guy with $1 worth of equipment manages to defeat a guy with $1,000 worth of equipment, you wonder where the other $99 went. And that's where, like I was saying at the beginning of the video, you have the election campaigns, the little guy's wallet, the 500K consulting PDFs, and so on. So yes, there are still quite a few crooks in this whole story. That's it. Also, before I go, I saw that there was a sailor who was on the Charles de Gaulle, the French aircraft carrier, and he used the fitness watch to go running. And actually, he revealed the position of the Armada. So in itself, the position of the Armada isn't super secret because we're in the Mediterranean. I'm sure that this Armada does whatever it wants. It's going to cross paths with commercial planes, merchant ships. It's going to cross paths. There are people who will see it from a passenger plane and so on. So in a way, the position isn't super secret. But it's still crazy to see that it can be revealed so easily by a lack of discipline. But that's not all it reveals. You know, when you run on a ship, I've often jogged on ships because when I traveled on cruises, the ship is big, but at the same time, you don't really move around enough. And so from time to time, you go out and do a lap. There's a promenade deck that goes all the way around the ship. That's what this sailor was doing. So when you run in the direction the ship is moving, you're going faster than the ship. So it's your speed plus the ship's speed. When you go around the other way and come back, you're going slower than the ship because it's your speed minus the ship's speed. Basically, your speed is subtracted from the ship's speed. Well, when we look at the Countermeasures, we see that the sailor doesn't just give the position of the armada, he gives it speed too. Why? Because there are loops that happen like that. He has a loop. When you look, there's a loop from time to time. What does that mean? It means that at some point, the sailor who is running is faster than the Charles de Gaulle. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had this loop. The sailor is going at about 5 km/h, a little less than 5 km/h. If at 5 km/h he is faster than the Charles de Gaulle, that means the Charles de Gaulle is going at less than 5 km/h. So it's an armada that's almost stationary unless I hope they haven't been caught on radar by Iran, and they're not. They're either turning with one engine down or there's a ship that's smoking and they're waiting for it or something else. You can't know. You can't tell these days. There you go. Anyway, if today there had been the landing, imagine it was June 6, 1944, the Germans would have just gone on Instagram and they would have seen everything. It wouldn't have been a secret. They'd be like, oh, they're coming now. Look. See? Well, my friends, we'll see how things go. But there's a very, very big disruption in aviation coming. I think we're just at the beginning. Thank you for watching this video until now. Thank you for your support for the channel. Subscribing to the channel's paid section gives you access to many exclusive videos you can watch starting today. Otherwise, there's also Patreon. You get access to the same exclusive videos. See you very soon.